So the kids are back at school, and some have already brought home some unwanted guests. Yes, I'm talking about germs. We know that our little people do a great job carrying germs from the schoolyard and the classroom home, which many times leads to household illnesses. So to talk to us about how to effectively spray our children down with disinfectant, just joking. To help us understand how to tackle the age-old question of how to keep our homes germ-free, I'm joined by Dr. Chandra and Dr. Jyoti Katakkar. Welcome to you both.
Thank you so much.
I should have brought my disinfectant can that I spray my children down with every day. So talk to us about what are germs, first of all.
Yeah, sure. It's, you know, Maggie, you hit the nail on the head. It is that time of year again. Yeah. The weather's getting cool outside. Kids are going back to school. Vacation's over for grown-ups too, and like you said, I bet people have already, for some of your viewers at home, are probably already getting sick kids and stuff like that, bringing stuff home from school. So what they're bringing home, the illnesses that they're getting are caused by germs, and we use that term a lot, germs, but a lot of times we don't really think about what that means. For doctors, when we say germs, we talk about small living creatures that are part of God's creation, that are part of the created order, that can sometimes start living and growing places where they shouldn't, like parts of our bodies, and that's what makes us sick. There's basically three kinds of germs that we talk about. First of all, we have bacteria. And these are small single-celled organisms that can start growing in places where they shouldn't and make us sick. That's the first type. Okay. Other types of germs are things like viruses, which are tiny, the most simple organisms that you can imagine. And believe it or not, they cause the majority of the infections that we bring home. And then finally, there's yeast and fungi, which again can start living in places where they shouldn't and make us sick, like bladder infections and stuff like that. And it's good that we're talking about it now because we're getting into that time of year. And this is the time of year that we call our flu season.
Yeah. And so why do we call it our flu season, Dr. Jyoti?
Well, the fact is that there really isn't anything specific about the cold weather that makes the influenza virus come into full vengeance, but it's really the fact that with the cold weather we're starting to seek refuge inside. Of course, the kids are going back to school, so now they're congregating indoors, and it's prime opportunity now for viruses to be shared.
And so when they go to school, they're touching everything and...
Exactly. Like, a lot of people think that there's something about cold weather that viruses and bacteria love. They love cold weather. The fact of the matter is, they hate cold weather just as much as we do. All right, but what happens is, that's a time when we're inside, 30 people in a room, touching each other, laughing, coughing, sneezing, sharing our lunch together. Stuff that doesn't happen as much when it's warm outside. We're outside, there's a lot of fresh air, but as soon as you get everybody back in a closed space, boom, here we are getting into our flu season. It's not just flu, but flu is only one type of many, many viruses and infections that you can get.
So growing up, I've always thought you have to bundle up, you have to, you know, have all the layers on. That's going to protect you from the flu. So you're saying it's really being with other people inside that where all of the bacteria and everything kind of spreads.
So keep in mind that 80% of your viruses are going to come from hands and dirty surfaces. So you're right. Our grandmothers always
bundle up.
Told us to bundle up when we're going outside when it's cold, because that's how you catch a cold. Sorry to say, that's probably not the truth. I think it's still a good idea to bundle up when it's cold, but not for that reason.
Just for comfort, really.
Exactly. And by no means are we trying to suggest that that these microorganisms are all bad.
Right.
In fact, we depend on them for our own health. Like, if we don't have the right types of microorganisms living inside of our gastrointestinal tracts, then you can get sick. We rely on these little critters to do all kinds of stuff. Like, I really like going to steakhouses. You know, and one of the things that happens there is they age their meat, and that's bacteria working to help food taste better. Joe really likes stinky cheeses. You know, so there's another way that germs can help us. So by no means are we trying to say that all germs are always bad. but it's just some of the ones that start coming around the house this time of year
Right.
that change things. So God made I always like to, sometimes I tell my patients this, is that not to have a paranoia of germs. God created us to live on planet Earth, all right? And planet Earth is not a sterile place. These microorganisms are all over the place. They live on our skin, they live on our lips, they live on tables and cups, and you name it, there's germs there. But God did prepare us to cope with them. And one of the things that he gave us to cope with them is something called our immune system. So probably the single greatest thing that we can do to protect ourselves from germs is to protect or help grow within our bodies a strong immune system.
And so ways of protecting our immune system would include the things you might guess would be true. So eating properly, eating a well-rounded diet, lots of fresh vegetables and fruit. The other thing that we don't always do so well at in our home is lots of rest. So if your kids are not rested, they are going to be more prone to picking up infections.
So I have a 2-year-old that came home with the sniffles and it now has I think a full-out flu.
Yeah.
And he goes to daycare, and so how do you teach young kids to kind of keep to themselves when they want to touch everything? I dropped him off at daycare today and he just sneezed all over the cars, and everybody else still kept playing. So they don't care. How do you teach them how to be mindful of these things?
You're absolutely right. I don't know if there's anything more of a ideal place to grow virus than a classroom or a daycare or something like that. So you're absolutely right. And so kids, I mean, I know personally that as soon as school comes around for us, our whole family gets sick. Usually it's the little guy, his name is James. He'll come home and he's been sneezed on and sneezing on people all day, and he comes home and he does the same thing.
Yeah.
So how can, in this time, we protect our kids and our families from infection? And aside from, of course, getting lots of rest and eating well and all that stuff, there's some other practical things that we can do. And believe it or not, the number one way that you can protect yourself from the spread of viruses and bacteria, as boring as it may sound, is hand washing. Yep.
So the studies have shown that in classroom settings where there are proper hand washing facilities, there are hand sanitizers made available, and proper teaching is done on how to use all of these things, that the rate of infections go way down. And in fact, probably 30% of absenteeism, that there's a reduction by 30% in absenteeism, because of course kids are missing school and are missing out on learning because of infection. So the hand washing is something that even the smallest of children can understand. They require a lot of reminders, of course, but before eating, after eating, when you come from outside into the house, when you've sneezed or coughed, reminding them that whenever they've done any of these things, they need to go and hand wash. And the hard part about hand washing is the length of time that you really need to
Sing the
hand
alphabet.
wash for. Singing the alphabet is one way of getting kids to stretch out the hand washing time.
I read a disturbing study that 1 in 5 people don't wash their hands.
If it's that low, I'd be surprised.
Really?
Actually. Yeah,
You think it's worse?
It very well could be, and it's a simple thing. And you know what? It doesn't have to be, fancy soaps.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, or anything like that? Just warm water and just common soap, dish detergent or whatever, will kill the vast majority of bacteria and viruses that can make you sick. But you're right, timing is one thing and just proper technique. So if we were to stop, and what we always tell our patients is that when you wash your hands, in fact, before I get into the funny thing, at the hospital where we work in Lindsay, Joe and I are physicians there, And it's crazy. Like for us, we wash our hands probably 40 times a day. And one time, these people from public health came in and they had this red dye, and they put it on our hands and said, don't look, just wash your hands and let's see where the red dye goes, where the soap would go. And wouldn't you know it, everyone has these parts of their hands that they never really wash. And the common parts of their hands that never get any soap on them are the backs of your hands and between your fingers. So whenever we're showing our kids to wash our hands, we always say, don't just do this, but make sure you get between your fingers, you do the backs, and then you try to get under your nails as well. And if you give a good wash for 15 seconds, or whatever song you can sing in 15 seconds, and then a good 10-second rinse and dry off with a disposable paper towel, ideally.
So not a towel, but a disposable towel.
A towel would be okay. But you can imagine that if many people use the same towel, there's going to be some residual stuff on that. So, I mean, if that's what you have, well, of course, you dry with a towel. In an ideal circumstance, everybody would have their own towel, but that's hard, you know. But a disposable paper towel, statistically, would be the best way to dry your hands.
These are great tips, especially at this time of season.
No, that's for sure.
We're all battling with the germs.
And it's funny, you know, the tips are so simple. Hand washing, another one that, again, is simple, but people ignore is staying home when you're sick.
Very good. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Mark Chandra and Dr. Jyoti Katakkar, for your information. This is great. These are hands-on, pun intended. I know I'm bad. You're bad. Tips that we need to take.